At my daughter's birthday party, my mother-in-law grabbed the homemade unicorn cake I'd spent hours decorating and said, "She doesn't deserve a celebration," before dumping it in the trash. That's when Rosalie smiled and pulled out her tablet. I should have known something was brewing the moment my 7-year-old daughter had started being so secretive about her school project. For weeks, she'd been hunched over her tablet during quiet time, quickly minimizing windows whenever Craig or I walked by. When I'd ask what she was working on, she'd give me that mischievous smile and say it was a surprise for Grandma Dolores. As an elementary school teacher with 12 years of experience, I thought I understood children's behavior patterns. But watching my daughter's reaction to her grandmother's cruelty, I realized Rosalie had been planning something far more sophisticated than any 7-year-old should be capable of. The tears that had been pooling in her eyes suddenly stopped. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, and that's when I saw it, the same calculating expression she got when she was 3 moves ahead in chess. "Grandma Dolores," Rosalie said, her voice steady despite what had just happened. "I understand you're disappointed in me, but I made something special for you. A video project about the important women in my life. You're the star of it." Dolores huffed, straightening her purse strap with that familiar air of superiority. "Well, I suppose that's something. Though I don't see how any project could excuse getting a C on a spelling test." "It's actually about lessons," Rosalie continued, connecting her tablet to our smart TV with practiced ease. "All the important things you've taught me. I got an A+ on it from Mrs. Patterson. She said it was the best documentation of family relationships she'd ever seen from a 2nd grader. The word documentation should have been my first warning. My daughter didn't use words like that casually. What none of us knew was that Rosalie had been systematically recording Dolores for 6 months. Every cruel comment, every manipulation attempt, every time she thought she was speaking privately about our family. My daughter had created what amounted to a comprehensive case file against her own grandmother. The backstory to this moment stretched back 3 years to when Craig got the promotion that moved us from Sacramento to Portland. His new position as senior software architect at a growing tech startup came with a $145,000 salary and the promise of significant stock options. We'd bought our first house, a charming 1920s craftsman in the Hawthorne district, and I'd landed my dream job teaching at Rosa Parks Elementary. Dolores had opposed the move from day one. "You're taking my granddaughter away from family," she'd complained, conveniently ignoring that her involvement in Rosalie's life consisted mainly of criticizing my parenting choices and undermining my authority. When we'd lived 20 minutes away in Sacramento, she'd drop by unannounced to rearrange my kitchen cabinets and lecture me about proper child-rearing techniques. The distance hadn't stopped her interference. If anything, it had made her more strategic about it. She'd convinced Craig to set up weekly FaceTime calls, ostensibly to maintain her relationship with Rosalie. What I didn't realize until much later was that these calls had become opportunities for Dolores to gather ammunition against me and plant seeds of doubt about our marriage. Craig, brilliant as he was with complex programming languages, had always been hopeless when it came to confronting his mother. His standard response to her criticism was to murmur, "She means well, Beth," and change the subject. After 9 years of marriage, I'd learned to pick my battles, but I'd also learned to protect myself and Rosalie as much as possible. What I hadn't learned was to protect us from technology. Rosalie's tablet had been a gift from Craig's company. All employees got family tech packages as part of their benefits. It was loaded with educational apps, parental controls, and what we thought was appropriate software for a bright 7-year-old. What we'd failed to notice was that it also had voice-activated recording capabilities and automatic cloud storage. My daughter, it turned out, was far more tech-savvy than either of her parents realized. "The video starts with Christmas," Rosalie announced to the room full of shocked party guests and one smug grandmother. That's when I first realized I needed to document the lessons Grandma was teaching me. The screen lit up with cheerful music and a title card, The Important Women in My Life, a study of grandmother Dolores by Rosalie Mitchell. Dolores preened, settling into the prime viewing position on our couch. Then the first clip played. The image was slightly shaky, clearly filmed from tablet height. The date stamp showed Thanksgiving, just 6 months earlier. Dolores was in our guest room, talking on her phone while she thought everyone was busy in the kitchen. That child is manipulative just like her mother. Dolores's voice rang out crystal clear. She cries to get attention. It's pathetic, really. 7 years old and still acting like a baby whenever things don't go her way. But the devastating part wasn't just the words. The tablet's camera had captured the reflection in our china cabinet glass, showing Rosalie curled up on the living room couch where she was supposed to be napping, tears streaming down her face as she heard every word. Dolores went white. When did you record this? But the video continued relentlessly. The next clip was from Christmas morning, a FaceTime call that Dolores didn't know was being recorded on Rosalie's end. Craig married beneath him, obviously, she was saying to someone off camera. Bethany can't cook properly, can't keep house to any decent standard, and she's raising a spoiled brat. I'm embarrassed to tell my friends about my son's family. When they ask, I change the subject. The room had gone completely silent. Even the 3 7-year-olds seemed to understand that something significant was happening. Another clip rolled. This one showed Dolores at Rosalie's school play 2 months ago, talking to another grandmother in the lobby while she thought I was in the bathroom. She can't even remember her lines properly. No talent whatsoever, just like her mother, not like my friend Margaret's granddaughter who's already been accepted into the gifted program. Now there's a child with actual potential. Rosalie will probably be average her whole life, maybe below average if she takes after Bethany's side of the family. Craig made a sound like he'd been physically struck. His face had transformed from confusion to horror as he watched his mother systematically destroy his daughter's self-worth with surgical precision. The clips kept coming, each one more damaging than the last. Dolores telling her hairdresser that Rosalie was chunky and would probably have weight problems like all the women on Bethany's side. Dolores on the phone with her sister, saying Craig was too weak to divorce me, but she was working on it. Dolores at a restaurant with her book club, describing how she was documenting every parenting mistake I made for future custody proceedings when Craig finally comes to his senses. But the worst clip was the most recent one. The timestamp showed just 2 weeks ago, Dolores in our guest room during her last visit, her voice clear and calculated. I'm thinking of telling Craig to file for divorce while Rosalie is still young enough to adapt to the change. Get full custody and start over with someone more suitable. That woman and her daughter are dragging him down socially and financially. Rosalie probably won't amount to anything anyway with those genetics. Bad breeding always shows eventually. Maybe if Craig remarries someone from a better background, their next child will have a real chance at success. The video then transitioned to a new scene. Rosalie sitting at her bedroom desk, looking directly into the camera with the composure of someone 3 times her age. My grandma Dolores taught me very important lessons, she said in her clear, sweet voice. She taught me that words can hurt worse than falling off my bike. She taught me that family isn't always kind. She taught me that some people will smile at you while saying terrible things about you when they think you can't hear. Rosalie on screen held up her tablet. But the most important thing she taught me was to always stand up for myself and my mommy. She taught me that bullies come in all shapes and sizes, even grandmother shapes. And she taught me that evidence is very important when you're dealing with someone who lies about being nice. The video ended with rolling credits over cheerful music. Special thanks to my tablet's voice-activated recording feature, automatic cloud storage, and Mrs. Patterson, who taught our class about documenting sources for research projects. Also, thank you to Mommy for always giving me extra hugs after Grandma's visits, even when she didn't know I needed them. The final screen showed a dedication. This video is dedicated to all kids who have relatives that pretend to love them but actually don't. You're not alone, and it's not your fault. The TV went black. The room remained completely silent. Dolores sat frozen, her face cycling through white, red, and back to white again. Finally, she found her voice. "This is an invasion of privacy. This is illegal, Craig. Your daughter violated my privacy, and you're going to let her get away with this?" But Craig had found something I hadn't heard in 9 years of marriage. His backbone. "My daughter," he said, his voice carrying new strength, "just showed me what kind of coward I've been, what kind of fool." He stood up, his hands shaking but his voice steady. "Mom, you threw my child's birthday cake in the trash can. You've been systematically trying to destroy my family for years, and I let it happen because I was too scared to stand up to you." "You're taking their side?" Dolores shrieked, standing so quickly she knocked over her water glass. "After everything I've done for you?" "What have you done for me, Mom?" Craig's voice was getting stronger. "Because what I just saw was you trying to convince me to divorce my wife and abandon my daughter. You called my 7-year-old manipulative. You said she had bad genetics. You talked about custody proceedings. What kind of grandmother does that?" Dolores turned to the other parents, seeking support. "This is a setup. They coached her to do this to humiliate me." Indigo's mother, a pediatric nurse named Janet, stepped forward. "Ma'am, no one could coach that kind of pain. We all saw that little girl crying on the couch while you talked about her like she was garbage. That was real trauma." "You don't understand," Dolores sputtered. "I was trying to help them improve." "By saying I'll never amount to anything?" Rosalie asked quietly, still holding my hand. "By trying to make Daddy divorce Mommy?" The other parents were exchanging glances, and I could see the wheels turning. These were educated Portland professionals: a software engineer, a nurse, a graphic designer, and an environmental lawyer. They understood exactly what they'd witnessed. Systematic emotional abuse of a child, documented with the intelligence of someone far beyond her years. "Mrs. Dolores," said Marcus, Jasper's father and the environmental lawyer, "I've seen family court cases with less compelling evidence than what your granddaughter just presented. If this were my case, I'd advise my client that they have grounds for a restraining order." That's when something clicked in my teacher brain. I'd been so focused on the immediate drama that I'd missed the larger implications. My 7-year-old daughter had just presented what amounted to a legal case, complete with documented evidence, dates, witnesses, and a clear pattern of harassment. "Rosalie," I said carefully, "how long have you been recording, Grandma?" "Since Christmas, when she made you cry in the bathroom after she said I was hyperactive and needed medication," Rosalie replied matter-of-factly. "I heard you, Mommy. That's when I started keeping evidence. Mrs. Patterson taught our class about evidence when we studied the justice system." The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't just a clever child getting revenge. This was a systematic documentation project that would hold up in any family court in the country. Dolores seemed to realize this too. She grabbed her purse, her movements sharp and angry. "This isn't over. I'll tell everyone what kind of people you really are. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of child you're raising." That's when I found my own voice, strengthened by years of dealing with difficult parents and unruly school boards. "Please do," I said, standing up. "Tell everyone about the 7-year-old who stood up to her bully. Tell them about the little girl who was smart enough and brave enough to document the truth. Tell them about the child who protected herself and her mother when the adults in her life failed to do it." I smiled. "I'm sure that story will go exactly the way you think it will." Dolores stormed out, slamming the door so hard that 3 of our paper butterflies fell from the ceiling, drifting down like purple snow. The room stayed quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then Indigo started clapping. His parents joined in. Soon everyone was applauding, and Rosalie took a little bow, her birthday crown finally slipping off her head completely. "Mrs. Mitchell," said Waverly's mom, reaching into her large tote bag, "I have a backup cake in my car. I always bring one because I have anxiety about party disasters. Would you like me to get it?" 20 minutes later, we were singing Happy Birthday again, this time around a store-bought chocolate cake that somehow tasted like victory. Craig held my hand throughout the song, squeezing it occasionally, as if to apologize for years of silence. When Rosalie blew out her 7 candles, plus 1 for good luck, everyone cheered twice as loud as before. After the guests left with promises to set up more play dates and exchanges of phone numbers, I found Rosalie in her bedroom, writing in her journal with unusual focus. "What are you writing about today, sweetheart?" She showed me the entry. "Today I turned 7. Grandma threw my cake in the trash, but I got something better. Daddy finally used his big voice to protect us. Best birthday ever." Then she showed me the next line. "P.S. Mrs. Patterson didn't really assign the video project, but she did say we should document bullying whenever we see it. I think I documented it pretty good." I sat down on her bed. "Rosalie, can I ask you something? Why didn't you tell me or Daddy what Grandma was saying about us?" She looked up from her journal with those wise eyes that seemed too old for her face. "I tried to tell Daddy at Christmas, remember? But he said Grandma just shows love differently, and I didn't want to make you more sad. You always looked sad after she visited, even when you thought I wasn't watching." The guilt hit me like a physical blow. My daughter had been protecting me while I thought I was protecting her. But then Mrs. Patterson taught us about evidence and documentation in our social studies unit about fairness, Rosalie continued. She said sometimes grown-ups don't believe kids unless they have proof, so I decided to get proof. That was very smart, sweetheart, and very brave. Will Grandma come back? I thought about it carefully. I don't know, but if she does, it will be different. Daddy won't let her hurt us anymore. Good, Rosalie said simply, and went back to her journal. The aftermath unfolded over the following months with the systematic precision my daughter had learned from her school justice unit. Dolores did exactly what she'd threatened. She told everyone what had happened, positioning herself as the victim of a vindictive child and an ungrateful son. What she hadn't counted on was that Portland, Oregon, is a city full of educated professionals who understand emotional abuse when they see it documented so clearly. Her own book club, after hearing her version of events, asked to see the video. When she refused, claiming it was illegally obtained, Margaret Stevenson, a retired family court judge in the group, explained that Oregon is a one-party consent state. Children absolutely have the right to record conversations they're part of, especially when documenting harassment. The video somehow made its way through the community network of parents, teachers, and child advocates. Not through social media, we were careful about that, but through the quiet channels that concerned adults use to protect children. Within 2 weeks, Dolores found herself politely but firmly disinvited from her book club, her bridge group, and her volunteer position at the hospital gift shop. Craig began therapy with Dr. Jennifer Blake, a specialist in family dynamics and conflict resolution. Their Thursday 4 p.m. sessions became a cornerstone of his transformation from conflict avoidant to protective father and husband. I spent so many years thinking that keeping peace meant avoiding confrontation, he told me after his 3rd session. But Dr. Blake helped me understand that I wasn't keeping peace. I was enabling abuse. There's a difference between being kind and being a doormat. The change in Craig was remarkable. When his boss asked him to work the weekend of Rosalie's school science fair, Craig politely declined. My daughter is presenting her project on renewable energy sources, he said. I'll be there to support her. When Dolores called him in March, demanding he control his wife and daughter and threatening to contest our parenting in family court, Craig calmly informed her that she was welcome to try, but that he'd provide the recording evidence to any judge who wanted to see it. You're choosing them over your own mother, she accused. "I'm choosing my family," Craig replied. "The family I created with the woman I love and the daughter we're raising together. You made it clear that you don't consider us your family." That was the last conversation they had. Rosalie's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, was so impressed with the documentation project that she used it, with our permission and all identifying information removed, as an example in her units on research methods and self-advocacy. The Portland Public School District's Child Advocacy Office asked if they could use elements of Rosalie's approach in their anti-bullying curriculum. Most children don't have the emotional regulation or strategic thinking to document harassment this systematically, explained Dr. Rebecca Foster, the district's child psychologist. Rosalie's methodology shows remarkable maturity and intelligence. She essentially created a case study in protecting herself when the adult protection systems failed. 6 months after the birthday party, our local paper ran a feature story about innovative approaches to documenting bullying, though they kept all family details anonymous. The headline read, "7-Year-Old's Research Project Exposes Family Bullying, Sparks New Approaches to Child Advocacy." Rosalie started a kindness documentation club at school, where children record and share acts of kindness they witness, creating a positive counterbalance to her original project. The club now has 43 members across 3 grade levels. But the most significant change was in our family dynamic. Craig learned to use what he calls his protective voice, firm, clear, and unwavering when it comes to defending his family. He negotiated a promotion to lead architect with a salary increase to $168,000 and full remote work flexibility so he could be present for school events. I received tenure at Rosa Parks Elementary and was asked to join the district's Committee on Innovative Teaching Methods. My experience helping Rosalie process and learn from the situation with Dolores had given me new insights into helping children navigate complex family dynamics. As for Dolores, we heard through extended family that she'd moved to Arizona to live near Craig's Aunt Helen. Apparently, she told people in her new community that her son had been poisoned against family values and that modern parenting was destroying children's respect for their elders. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Last week, Rosalie asked me, "Mommy, do you think I was mean to Grandma Dolores?" "No, sweetheart, you showed the truth. That's not mean. That's brave." She smiled and returned to her homework, then looked up again. "Maybe someday Grandma will say sorry and we can try again." That's my daughter. Even after everything, her heart remains open to the possibility of change, redemption, and love winning in the end. She documented the cruelty, but she didn't let it make her cruel in return. The unicorn cake incident became legendary in our neighborhood. Sometimes other parents stop me at the grocery store to say they heard what happened and to commend us for standing up for ourselves. But more importantly, it became a turning point that transformed a family dynamic that had been broken for years. Craig now calls every Sunday at 2 p.m., not to his mother, but to check in with me and Rosalie about our week, our dreams, our concerns. We've created the kind of family communication that Dolores always claimed to want, but never actually practiced. And Rosalie, she just turned 8. This year's birthday party featured a rainbow cake, 12 friends, and absolutely no unexpected drama. When she blew out her candles, she made a wish for more documentary projects, but happier ones. I have a feeling that wish is going to come true,